So, good morning, junior class. We are going to talk today about planning for after high school. Okay? I know it might seem like a long time off, but it's really not. And now is the time for you guys to really start to take steps to figure out what it is you want to do. I know some kids on the way in said, hey, I already know what I'm doing. I don't need to be here. But you know, I and the other counselors will tell you that we still have seniors changing their minds as to what they were going to do. Seniors who thought they were going to OCC and now want to do something different, or students that were going to go to a 4-year, maybe now want to stay home because of finances. So plans change, and you need to know what the options are, and you also need to know how to pursue those options. Okay, and so today we have a presenter that's going to talk to you specifically about the college application process. And I'm just going to touch base on a couple of quick things for you guys before I introduce him. We are going to give to you on your way out a handout, the college process timeline. It explains Milford High School's process. It's going to give you some information. It has all the phone numbers and email addresses of every college in the state of Michigan. Apprenticeship, technical schools, all of that information you guys are going to get when you go today. We're also going to give you a flyer on the college fair that's coming up next week in Huron Valley. It's in Lakeland this year. We go back and forth every year. But over 50 schools and tech schools are going to be there for you. So between now and the fall, you guys have work to do. Now's the time to start getting busy. You need to go to some of the websites for colleges you're interested in or tech schools and sign up for a junior visit day. They're scheduled already. You need to be there. You're not going to know what college is the right fit for you until you get onto their campus. So that's something you need to do. You need to schedule meetings with college advisors, and you need to Google some technical schools and find out more about those opportunities if that's something you're interested in. Post-secondary options. You know, down at the bottom, we said, hey, if you're not sure about starting a 4-year college, but you don't want to live in your parents' basement, you need to check into some other options. You have to do something after high school ends. It doesn't have to be a 4-year program, but you have to do something. You have to get some training, maybe the military, maybe work experience, maybe a 2-year school, but you need to do something. And so there's a lot of choices out there for you.
Why is the military a second choice?
Why is the military a second choice?
Yeah.
I don't know that the military is a secondary
choice.
Why did I list it as second?
Yeah. Why was it that number one?
Probably because most students end up going to a 4-year school. We have few students that enter the military, but the military is an excellent option for students as well. Is that something you're thinking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you need to sign up with Mrs. Ramroth to see military recruiters when they come at the lunch table. Okay, so we can talk afterwards. You and I will have a little meeting about that. All right, NCAA. If you guys are thinking you're going to play Division I or Division II sports in college, you need to get registered with the NCAA. You also need to make sure that your academic program that you're taking and will be taking meets their requirements. You can't come down at the end of your senior year and say, I'm going to, play NCAA Division II. If you don't have the classes that they require, you won't be able to do that. So you need to go to ncaa.org and you need to register. Okay. Common application. If you're thinking about applying to any of the colleges listed at the top, you will be using a common application. It's very detailed, it's online, it's very specific. You will need a letter of recommendation from your counselor, and you'll need a letter of recommendation from a teacher plus a personal essay. We have forms to fill out to get your letters of recommendation and student services, and you need to give everybody about 2 weeks notice. And that process for the common application starts in August. Okay. So today our presenter is Mr. Michael Guy. He's an admissions director from Central Michigan University. He's going to talk a little bit about Central, but he's also going to talk about the general college application process. So even if Central is not a school that you're considering, he's going to have information that's going to be relevant to you. So I'm going to ask that you're a good audience, a good representation of Milford High School for our presenter, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Guy.
Great. Yeah. You've got lots of choices. As we look at our different options, we can look at community colleges, as Mrs. Groff mentioned a few moments ago. Someone mentioned the military, which is also a fine opportunity. And there are many students that will take a look at the military as an option to possibly segue that into college later on, because there are some excellent benefits for the military. So there are many options as you look at next year, looking at many choices after high school. We're going to focus a bit more on a four-year college or university, but we'll talk about all the other options as well. Military, trade school, many students will even look at work, but increasingly you're going to need some additional training beyond high school to consider a career. So be that the world of work, or be that a trade school, or be that the military, you'll have some different things that you must pursue after you finish. Looking at the four-year institutions, there's different ways that you can apply coming out of high school. You could transfer from community college to go to a four-year, or you could also go directly to a four-year university. When we look at applying from high school, you're going to have to take a look at a lot of different factors. First, you have to decide what your must-haves are. And what I mean by that, and we'll talk a bit more in detail, you can look at things like size, distance, and a number of other things to make a decision about what your must-haves are. As Mrs. Groff mentioned a few moments ago, talking with your counselor is going to be very important. You really need to be kind of in partnership with your counselor, because there are a lot of things that they can help you with as you're trying to make decisions to find out a little bit more about those institutions. In many cases, the institution that you're looking at will be a place that many other students from Milford High School have already been, and she can give you a little more guidance about, oh, so-and-so is there right now, I can help you out. You're going to want to also investigate and evaluate some other opportunities as you're going through. Definitely, as Mrs. Groff mentioned, you're going to want to spend some time touring campus. It's very important to get to a college campus. Everyone has a view book. Everyone has a website, but it's increasingly important to actually get to campus. Did anyone have a chance over the break to actually visit the college campus while you're on break? Handful of you did. It's good to do during the spring of the junior year. We really encourage it. We'll talk about some of the other opportunities during the summer as well. You'll reach a point where you'll apply, but it's not that far away. Really, you could be applying to some universities as early as this summer, more commonly early in the fall. We'll talk about that timeline in a few moments as well. You'll eventually reach a point where you must narrow your choices, realizing you can only choose one college. So we'll talk a bit more about that process. We'll also talk about the financial aid process, which is very important. Right now, just to give you an example, our university, when you look at tuition and fees, room and board for the year at Central Michigan University is just about $19,000. Most of us can't walk into our parents' living room and say, can you write me a $19,000 check for next year? And that's where financial aid, scholarships, and other things kind of come into play. So we'll talk about that as well. And ultimately, you're going to have to make a decision. I'll use the example. I was talking to a counselor a couple of weeks ago, and she was using Central as an example. She had a student that came into her office about a year ago, was incredibly excited about going to CMU. And she said, I've got everything set. My roommate and I were both going to go to Central. We've been to campus. We didn't really go to the admissions office, but we did have a chance to go visit some friends. She said, I'm so excited about our nursing program, and I'm ready to go. And my colleague, who's a counselor at another high school, said, wait a minute, you said CMU? And she said, yeah, I'm all set. And she said, you might want to double check, but I don't think Central has a nursing program. So, in this person's case, she was all excited about the institution. She had read a few brochures, and she had talked to some friends that were there. But the very first question here, does the college offer my program? If you're looking at nursing, Central's not a good place for you. I'm a Central alum. I love our institution, but nursing is not a program that we offer. There are many great programs in the area, right here in Metro Detroit. University of Detroit Mercy, Wayne State, Michigan State University, Grand Valley State University on the other side of the state, all offer terrific nursing programs. The community colleges also have some great links to nursing. But as you're looking at your programs, one of the things you're going to have to do is make sure that the school offers the program that you're interested in. Another quick example, architecture. It's a program where there are only 3 programs in the state of Michigan. Lawrence Tech University, pretty close by in Southfield, Michigan. University of Detroit Mercy, right in the state of Detroit, and University of Michigan Ann Arbor are the only 3 architecture programs in the state of Michigan. So if you've decided that's your program, the list gets much smaller pretty quickly. Next question, am I interested in a private or public college? You may not know the answer to that right now, but that's part of the exploration process. There are some differences, typically in size. Publics tend to be larger. There are some exceptions, but as a rule, public universities in the state are some of the larger universities and some of the mid-sized universities. And at the same time, there are some private colleges that are a little bit smaller, but in general, the private colleges are smaller than the public colleges. So those are things that you have to take a look at. Do I want to stay in-state? Am I looking at some out-of-state schools? I've had many students that have said, I can't get far enough away from the cold. I want to go down south, or I want to go out west where it's a little bit warmer. The idea sometimes sounds attractive at first, but many times you have to start to ask yourself, do I really want to be that far away from friends and family? For many of you, that answer may be yes, but for some of you, after you've looked it up all over, you may decide that that's not what you want to do. Also, financial assistance. Am I going to need financial assistance in some way? For most of us, it's going to be yes. For some, it might be just a small amount. For others, you might need more aid, depending upon your situation. But it is something you have to ask yourself as you look at different colleges. We're at a point right now where there are universities in the country that are well over $40,000. I mentioned our working budget is right about $19,000. In the state of Michigan, we're kind of in the middle somewhere. There are universities that are considerably more expensive, and some that are community colleges are kind of on the other end, they're the least expensive. So those are things that you'll have to take a look at. And then there's a question for you. It's kind of an individual thing. The college I'm considering must have what? For some of you, it might be a nice, pristine campus that really has a lot of space to walk around and maybe more of an outdoor type of situation. For some of you, you might want to be in a major urban center. Those are two very different campuses, and we have many good examples in the state and really around the country where you'll have to explore and decide what your priorities are with that. I mentioned the counselors a few moments ago. I think it's incredibly important, if you haven't spent some time with your counselors, to do so. There are so many things that they know that will help you get through this process. So you'll have a chance to be able to just clue them in as to some of your priorities. Your program, perhaps the size of the institution that you're thinking about, distance, those are all factors that they can kind of help with. They're experts in this area. Ask about application requirements. Realistically, sometimes they can give you a much better sense of what your grade point relative to what the admission requirements are in that institution. Again, and when they're looking at the class of 2012 right now, they know their students in classes before them, 2011 and 2010, where they've gone, what kind of grade points they had, what's necessary to get in. They can give you a much better sense of what the requirements might be. I always like to say, it's like building a roadmap, and there are lots of different things that you are going to need to take a look at as you're going. To actually start to plan. If you haven't scheduled college visits already, it's a good idea to almost build a timeline right now to say, I want to visit this spring or this summer. Maybe set yourself a deadline as to when you'd like to try and narrow those choices down. For many of you right now, it's kind of like the sky's the limit. There might be a dozen schools that you're looking at, but eventually, by the fall, you're going to want to get to a point where it's a much more manageable list. We usually say most students at this stage are applying to at least 3 or 4 universities, but most of us aren't going to apply to 15. It's too expensive and it's too time consuming. So you're going to want to get to a point this spring, using kind of a roadmap to actually get to a point next fall that you're applying to maybe 3 or 4 universities. For some of you it might be 5 or 6, but there are very few people that are applying to 12 universities. It's a lot of extra work. The internet's a terrific tool. How many people have been on a college website, at least a couple of college websites this year, this semester? Terrific. Some of you have been on and looked at programs. Some of you have looked at virtual tours. There are lots of things that really are available on the internet that will give you a great insight to that institution. It doesn't replace a visit. We'll talk about that in a little while. But I think the internet's a great place to start. If you haven't done some research already, I would encourage you to do so. Coincidentally, a week from tonight, at Milford High School, you'll have a college night. If you haven't been to a college night already, I think this is a terrific opportunity right in your backyard. As Mrs. Roth mentioned, there will be over 40 or 50 universities that will be there. Universities, the military is there are trade schools that are typically there, so you have really all the options that we were looking at a moment ago, from community colleges to the four-year universities, to possibly some trade schools, and the military. They'll typically be there, so it's a great opportunity, even though it's termed a college night, it's really all-encompassing in terms of looking at some of the opportunities that are available after high school. So I really encourage you to do that. It's a great opportunity to start to grab information from a variety of institutions. Just about everyone has a booklet and other information that will allow you to you'll come out with a bag of information, and that's kind of a nice starting point for you to say, okay, I've got information from 10 institutions in this bag. I'm hauling out 5 pounds of material, and I know that I'm going to have to narrow this down. It's a great way to kind of take that, digest it, learn a little bit more as you go through the process. Meeting with admissions representatives when they come to your school is also another great opportunity. Once you've started this process of getting to a point where you've got the information, you've kind of digested it, by next fall you're going to have the opportunity to visit with different schools as they come here. And you'll get to a point where you'll have that bag of information this spring, but by next fall you will have reached a point where you can narrow it to a much more manageable number. You might have information from 25 schools in your bag, but you're not going to visit with 25 schools next fall. You might visit with 8 or 9, maybe 5 or 6. But it's a great opportunity as they come to your school to actually listen to their presentation, even spend some one-on-one time, get some face time with that individual from the schools that you're most interested in. In visiting campuses, we'll talk a little bit more specifically about that. I think it's one of the most important things that you can do to really help you narrow your choices as you go through this process. When we look at a campus tour, some of you visited this past week, there are lots of opportunities that are available. There's an old saying that from Stephen Covey, who's written a number of kind of self-help books, begin with the end in mind. And what I mean by that is that I talk to too many students that will say, oh, this is my friend on campus. The example I used a few moments ago with the nursing student who just went, visited campus, walked around, didn't really spend much time getting an itinerary together while she was on campus. I would encourage you, I always use the phrase, put us to work. And when I say us, a collective we. If you're interested in Michigan State University, if you're interested in Hope College in Holland, Michigan, both great institutions, call them, schedule a tour on campus, schedule an appointment with an admissions counselor. If you're interested in, for instance, Michigan State has really a nationally renowned packaging program, really a unique program in this region. There aren't that many of those programs. See if you can schedule some time with them on our campus. We have one of the first accredited sports med athletic training programs in the country. We can get you set with Dr. Renee Shingles on campus where you can actually spend some time with her and learn more about that program. She'll know so much more than anyone on our admissions staff. I know some basics about the program, but this is someone who actually works with students every year, working in the Olympics as a trainer, and will give you a real insight as to some of the opportunities that you can have while you're there. So it's really important to kind of start before you actually visit campus and say, what do I want to accomplish while I'm there? How much time am I going to spend on campus? And let me just not walk around. Let me have actually an itinerary of things that I want to do while I'm there. You can call our office. You can also, most of the university websites now have an opportunity where you can actually go to the website and schedule a visit, and actually schedule a tour time, schedule an appointment with an admissions counselor, request a visit. So either calling or scheduling over the internet is a great idea to really get things started. Parents are going to be a part of the process, and I really encourage you to take them along. They're going to be able to, ultimately, let me also preface that by saying that this is definitely going to be your decision. It's so important for you to make a decision that you're comfortable with and not go to your parents' alma mater because that's where they want you to be. If you go to your parents' alma mater because that's where you want to be, that's great. But don't go because your girlfriend is there or a boyfriend is there or your parents want you to go or you have an uncle that went there. It's ultimately going to be your decision. That said, it's important to make sure that your parents are in the process because they need to feel comfortable and learn more as you're going through with them. So bringing them with you to the campus visit is very helpful. They'll be able to ask some questions that maybe you haven't thought of as you're going through. And definitely, while you're there, pick our brains. Talk about the opportunities that are available for internships. If you're interested in studying abroad, my son is a junior at Central right now, and I just talked to him. Actually, I haven't talked to him this week. I talked to him on Saturday. He was coming back from London. He's actually studying spending a semester abroad. He'll be back April 29th. And he is at Edge Hill University, which is close to Liverpool, but has had a chance to go to Scotland, Ireland. He was just in London this past weekend. It's a terrific opportunity. It's one that I wish that I had when I was a student, and I really encourage students to consider that. And those are questions that you can ask while you're on campus. What opportunities, if you're fascinated with possibly studying abroad, what opportunities are there? What about internship opportunities? What about student organizations? A lot of different opportunities that you can really learn more about while you're on campus, talking to the experts. I mentioned size earlier. Central is just over 20,000 students. Our population on campus is about 20,200. We're kind of in the middle somewhere. Michigan State is more than twice our size. There are about 46,000 students. We have a school, and actually Michigan State and Central are separated by about 60 miles on 127, it's a highway. About 15 or 20 miles from us and about 40 miles from East Lansing is a private college called Alma College. And I've always been a real proponent of Alma for many students. It has a student enrollment of about 15 to 1,700, much smaller. For some of you, a small private college is going to be perfect. For some of you, a very large public is going to be perfect. Central is kind of in between as far as not being as large as Michigan State or Wayne State, but quite a bit larger than the small private. That's one of the things that you'll have to consider. For some of you, going into a large lecture hall is something that's not it's not undesirable. For many, you're saying, I really want small class size. I want to be in a class that's maybe 12 or 14 students. You may be able to get that at a small private college, and it's not as likely at a larger university. So many things you have to consider. To me, this is, when we look at location, urban versus rural, I have students who will say, and sometimes young ladies will say, what about the shopping in Mount Pleasant? And I'll say, well, if you're in the backyard of the biggest, Southeast Michigan is the most populous area in the state. There's nothing that compares to Mount Pleasant. We have a Kohl's, we have a Target, we have a Sam's Club. But as far as true shopping, if that's what you're looking for, Mount Pleasant is not the shopping mecca. On the flip side, we'll have students who will say, I really want to be outside, and I want to be in an area where I can ski and fish and do those sort of things. Probably Wayne State's not your choice if that's what you're looking for. So urban versus rural, I think, is still one of those factors you'll have to consider. And Michigan's really blessed with one of the best education systems in the country. With large, Michigan State is one of the 8 or 9 largest universities in the country as far as enrollment. We also have some amazingly pristine universities as far as just the environment in the Upper Peninsula. Michigan Tech and Northern Michigan are both just beautiful campuses and beautiful areas. But those are all things you have to consider as you're going through the process. Housing. For me, talking to different students, the two biggest adjustments that we hear year after year are, number one, in the classroom, the idea that for the first time ever, you don't have the same set of classes every day, although increasingly with block schedules in some high schools that's changed. But in high school, you tend to have a set of classes, or in college rather, a set of classes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and a different set of classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You're starting for the last dozen years, the last 10 or 11 years, you've been starting pretty early in the morning. The fall of 2013, for many of you, you may not have your first class until 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. Very different. You may have your first night class. You're used to being at 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon. You may have your first night class. That's one of the biggest adjustments. The second biggest adjustment that we hear all the time is, I have my own room. How many people have their own bedroom right now? Most of you. I can almost guarantee you that you will have a roommate. So looking at housing, looking at some of those opportunities are going to be very important as you're going through. Program requirements. Sometimes there's an admission process to get into the university, but then there's a second admission process to get into a program. So for instance, anyone thinking about teacher education, elementary, secondary education, I'll use us as an example. You will apply to Central in the fall of your senior year, if such was one of the schools you considered. It might be Oakland University, which has a fine program, Michigan State University, a number of different opportunities around the state for education. But for most of those colleges, you're applying to the university, and then there's a second process. In our case, it's midway through your sophomore and the end of the sophomore year, you will actually apply to the education program. It's good to familiarize yourself with that process because you have a number of other things that you need to do, including some volunteer work, working with the student, with the age group of students that you're hoping to work with at some point. So it's good to know those requirements up front so that you can start to work on those things right away, so that by the time you're applying at the end of the sophomore year, you have everything in hand. Everything is taken care of as far as program requirements. Nursing is also similar that way. Most colleges and businesses will actually have, or most business programs will have a college of business, or a B school as they call it, that you have to apply to after you've been admitted to the university. You'll establish a grade point at the college level and actually have to apply. So it's good to be aware of some of those program requirements. Most of our colleges now are pretty technologically advanced. We're a wireless campus. Many others are. For some of you especially who are really into technology, it's good to find out what colleges have as far as technology on their campus, some of the opportunities for it. Tutoring, different advisement that's available on campus, for many students, it's important to know that those things are available. Not that you're expecting to have problems, but if you run into a challenge, you should know exactly what's available for if you're having problems with the paper, or maybe you ran into a problem with a math class. It's good to know if there are tutorial services available. Many departments on our campus will have study tables where the math department will be there to be able to talk to you and work through your problems. We'll actually have individual tutors, but also have other additional supplemental sessions to kind of help make sure that your grade in that class is that you're doing well. If you're in engineering, you need to make sure that you understand calculus so that you understand calculus 2, to understand discrete math. So making sure that that base is taken care of, oftentimes using those student services, is imperative for you to advance as a student. Also, just getting a better feel for some of the activities that are available. College wouldn't be college if you didn't have some other things going on outside. I'll use an example on our campus. Program Board is an organization that basically schedules all the concerts, the speaker series, just different entertainment that's coming to campus. It's kind of cool as a student to be able to say at the beginning of the year, I'd like to have whoever your favorite artist is on campus. And many times you're able to do that in terms of bringing speakers and bringing just other entertainment. We have a budget for the program board to actually work with those artists to actually bring them to campus. So many different opportunities are available as far as student activities, and it's good to be aware of some of those opportunities that are available. Most of us, in our case, we have over 250 student organizations based on anything from a religion to fraternities and sororities to just different interest areas that you might have. We have a very active Habitat for Humanity group on campus that works in that area. So just lots of different things, whatever your passions might be, kind of find out what each campus has in that area. Each campus to me is almost like a little town or city unto itself, and it's about you delving in and finding out more about which one best fits you. Let's talk about the application process. This is kind of about data, isn't it? We're seeing probably about 30% of our students now, maybe only about 20-25, that are actually using the hard copy paper application. We're at a point where several universities are now saying you must apply online. I think Michigan State is there right now, and a number of others. But we're at a point where just about 3/4 are. So you are at a point now where the paper application is not an option, but I wanted to leave that there, realizing that sometimes students will just automatically assume that when you submit that electronic application, that your counselor, Mrs. Groff and one of the other counselors, just automatically knew that. This fall, I had not less than 15 conversations, either by email or by phone, where a student would call me and say, I applied a month ago, or I applied 2 months ago, I haven't heard yet. You told me it was going to be 4 to 6 weeks. We'll talk about that in a few moments. And my first question I'll ask is, okay, you know approximately when you applied. And I'll look it up in the system, and I'll say, we don't have ACT scores or transcripts for you. You know when you had those sent in. Oh, I didn't realize I had to call someone. I thought that just happened. You need to make sure that you're in touch, again, with your counselor on a regular basis to make sure that that's done. So it's important to make sure that when you're applying, you're also keeping your counselor in the loop so that they can take care of those things. Mrs. Groff mentioned the Common Application. There's a handful of universities in the state right now that are on the Common App, and that number will grow. I'm just talking to different people around the state. I think each year we're going to see a few more. So the Common Application actually requires an essay. In our case, we don't require it, but we think that it's a nice touch. So gathering your thoughts and making sure that you put some things together about why you feel like you'd be successful, what the institution that you're applying to, what you feel like what benefit they would bring to you. Getting yourself to a point where you have a pretty good understanding of what you'd like to do on that campus, or why you think you would thrive on that campus, is a good way to start to kind of plan that essay and get that in that process. The essays for many universities can really make or break the application. In our case, it's considered to be a nice addition, but it's not a required part. So it's good to be educated on which process you're going through. In some cases, it's a very integral part of the application, and it's good to make sure that you're spending the time to get those ready and represent yourself in the best way possible. Letter of recommendation. I strongly encourage students to secure, right now, this is a great time to start to make sure that between now and the summertime, that you're getting someone in your school, perhaps a person in your community, a clergy person in your community that believes in you, to start to put together those letters. Don't see Mrs. Groff on September 15th and say, I need this by September 21st. She's going to be barraged with a number of those requests. So if you start to touch base with teachers and counselors and just other school officials that believe in you, start to do that now as a junior or even early in the fall. Give them some notice, because for many processes, they're going to require at least a letter. As she mentioned with the Common App, it is a requirement. Typically, we will see the largest number of our applications between early September, shortly after you return as seniors, and the end of October. Many of our counselors will say, I want those applications in by October 31st. Some universities will have deadlines of December 1. Others, we operate under rolling admissions, so we'll still see applications in January, but we see the overwhelming majority of our applications between Labor Day and Halloween. That's a real good time frame to consider as you're applying for admission. Should go without saying, but neatness counts. Make sure that you're proofing the application. If you're doing essays, make sure that you have a friend proof those. It's always important. I've seen more than my share of typos and just usage errors that don't represent you very well. So make sure that you're spending the time to do it right. And that's why it's so important to start early, because you'll have a chance to have other people that you trust look over it. It's oftentimes, if you're looking at it yourself, you've seen it so many times, it's difficult to catch errors. So have someone proof that for you. I mentioned being professional. It's okay to have kind of a pet nickname for your email address, and I'm sure you've heard this from others already, but I want to reemphasize, because just 2 weeks ago I got one. It's kind of creepy for a father of a 20-year-old to answer an email from somebody at hottie@AOL.com. It's something, when I see something like that, it doesn't make me feel comfortable, and it should make you feel comfortable. So it's okay to have a little pet nickname that you use, but why don't you, if you haven't already, put together a email that you're using just for college, just for correspondence that way, and that kind of alleviates that problem. I mentioned spelling and grammar. I won't get into Facebook and MySpace, but there are universities that will take a look at those. And if you have some inappropriate information on there, it's probably a good idea to start to change that up, because in our case, we don't really review it, but there are universities that do. This is really looking at your junior year, where we'd like to see you. Hopefully at this stage you've taken 3 years of English, 3 years of math. We're hoping to see 3 years of science and the social sciences. We generally like to see 2 years of foreign language, and more specifically, we like to see 2 years in the same language, so there's a certain mastery there. So I've had students who will say, it's okay to take a year of French and a year of Spanish. And I'll say it's okay, but we prefer to see 2 years of one. If you decide to go with you want to really take French and Spanish in high school, maybe take 2 years of French and 1 year of Spanish, but we'd like to see 2 years in one language, for sure. Typically, when we're looking at an application, we're going to look at cumulative grade point average, and then we're going to look very closely at those college prep classes, or those core classes that your counselors have encouraged you to take the last few years. So English, science, math, the usual suspects that we were just looking at a few moments ago. We will really focus on those core classes to make a decision about your application. So those, although we're looking at all the classes, the focus is really going to be on those core academic classes. And this is nothing that you haven't heard already. It is something that becomes pretty important, a pretty important part of the process for us. So the rank and the rigor of your coursework, how rigorous your schedule was throughout 4 years, becomes a big part of the process. The other thing that we look at that a lot of students aren't aware of, and hopefully right now as juniors you're looking at yourself saying, I'm doing my best work. I would much rather see a student that maybe stumbled the freshman year. Like right now as juniors, you can probably show me if I asked you where a certain room was, you can give me perfect directions. You know this building pretty much inside and out. Your freshman year, think about your first few days here. It's a pretty big place. It doesn't seem like it now, but it was back then. And sometimes that adjustment from middle school to high school wasn't as smooth as you would hope for it to be. I would much rather see a slow start the freshman year, improve the sophomore year, and continue to do your best work your junior year. So if we were to graph it out like we do in geometry class, it's moving in this direction, you're moving up. I would much rather see that scenario than a student who had a great freshman year, got that not so rare disease called senioritis as a sophomore, and your junior year you're really not doing your best work. If you're trending downward, we're looking at your application as a senior and saying, what's next? So it's an important part of the process for us to see, ideally, a very consistent trend throughout high school. But if that's not the case, we would much rather see an upward trend than a great start and a slow finish. So that is something that we'll look at. Also, the senior year schedule. For some reason, this urban legend persists that the senior year isn't that important, because back to our time frame that we were talking about a moment ago, you're applying in early September. You're going to be admitted typically. If you're applying, let's say you're applying September 15th. In our process, you're probably going to hear roughly between October 15th and October 20th. So many students will say, hey, I'm in. What difference does my senior schedule make? There have been universities that every year, and I had this conversation with several directors around the state in the fall, where a couple of universities actually rescinded or revoked the admission based on a student doing poorly the senior year. So the grades are important, but also the senior year schedule is important. Making sure that you're staying the course and taking a good solid set of classes throughout your senior year is going to help your preparation and help your success, your future success in college. We look at the ACT more often. We probably see I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say 20 to 1, at least 20 to 1 in our office, the ACT over the SAT. That said, I've run into students through the years that have said, I took the SAT and I really did better on the SAT. So if you're in a situation right now where, let's say you're looking at some schools on the East Coast, or maybe you're looking at some schools in the South, the SAT is probably the more prevalent test. If you're looking at Michigan, and for the most part, the state of Michigan, and for the most part schools in the Midwest, the ACT will do just fine. You won't need anything more than the ACT, but for some students, the SAT, you score better on the SAT than the ACT, and for some students it's the other way around. But the idea is we need to see one or the other. Our average freshman, for instance, this fall at CMU, the average freshman was coming in with about a 3.3 GPA and about a 23 on the ACT. That's the average. Generally in our process, if we see an ACT that's 20 or above, it's considered to be positive. So sometimes students will take that ACT and say, oh, I got an 18 or I've got a 19. I think I can do better on the SAT, and they'll take it, and maybe they'll get a 1050, which is the equivalent of about a 21 on the SAT. So we'll look at either of those tests, but we will expect you to take one or the other for admission. And most of you took it a few weeks ago, the ACT, for the first time as juniors. The financial aid process is, for many of us, going to make the difference between being able to afford to go to college and not being able to afford to go to college. And making sure that you understand the process is really important. You'll start to hear from your counselors probably late this fall about the whole process and timeline surrounding financial aid. In general, the time frame is you cannot apply until after January 1st of your senior year. So you couldn't apply in August even if you wanted to, or in September even if you wanted to. But you must apply by February 15th. So it's really important to be aware of those guidelines. You need to kind of follow those general guidelines to make sure that you're getting consideration for all the financial aid that you might be eligible for. Also, make sure that you're beginning to do research at different scholarship opportunities that are available. And there are a ton of different websites. I happen to like Fastweb, if anyone's been on that one. But there are many other opportunities to help you learn a little bit more about some of the different scholarship opportunities that are available. Check your community. There are different opportunities that are available within the Milford community. There might be some local scholarships that are available, even scholarships in your school. But it's really important to make sure that you're applying for federal financial aid, filing with FAFSA between January 1st and February 15th. And behind the scenes during the fall of your senior year, you're looking at different other scholarship opportunities that might be available. They're kind of two separate processes. You're filing for financial aid, the FAFSA, which is need-based aid, and then scholarships tend to be merit-based, based on grade point or perhaps other talents that you might have. If you're gifted in music or you're a theater student, many of those scholarships are by audition, and finding out about those opportunities in the fall of your senior year or over the summer is important so that you can start to, again, plan ahead and give yourself time to get consideration for these awards. Let's say what two schools match with your wants the most. It might end up for you it might end up being 4, it might end up being 5, but generally I would say 2 to 5. You'll get to a point where you're narrowed down to that level. So it's much more manageable, it's much easier to get your arms around 3 or 4 schools to kind of compare than having a dozen. While you're on campus, it's really important to make sure that you're interacting with different people, even asking students, walking up to students. Sometimes that's not comfortable for you, but if you can get to a point where you can start to ask students as you're talking, asking the tour guide, but even just walking up to a student on campus and say, "Are you a student here? How do you like it?" It gives you a better sense of what it's going to be like. After all, you are going to ask this question for the first time in your life. Is this a place that I can be for the next 4 or in some cases 5 years? So it's not just a fleeting decision. It's something you have to take a look at. This is kind of one of the first real long-term decisions that you're going to make. In many cases, you're making a decision for the next 4 or 5 years. Once you've decided, you're going to put actually deposit down for most universities, because I'll use us for an example. This year, we're at a point in our admission process where we have processed nearly 18,000 applications. Our freshman class will be in the neighborhood of 3,500 students. Our transfer class will be probably around 1,050 or 1,100 students this fall. So many students, and what that tells us is that many students will apply to several universities. And I encourage you, like we talked about earlier, we like to see you apply to several universities. But what tells us that a student is planning to come is an initial deposit that they'll make. It's $175. It's refundable through May 1. So many students will make that deposit to maybe a couple of different universities. And that's why it's important not to have 5, because you don't want to pay 5 or 6 deposits. You want to be able to pay maybe a couple of deposits with the idea that most of them will give you a refund. So for our students right now who have deposited, they have until May 1 to decide to get a full refund. So if a student decides, I narrowed it down between Central and Miami, Ohio. I've decided on Miami. They'll send us an email. No questions asked. We'll send them the $175 refund. So that deposit holds your spot in the freshman class. Probably more importantly, it starts to get you more information. So for instance, our seniors right now are already getting ongoing information about scheduling. I was just on the phone with a student on Friday that's scheduled her orientation date for May 24th. She's all set. She knows she has orientation in May. She'll walk away from orientation with her classes for the fall. She'll know what she has, what classes she is taking before her senior year is even finished. Also housing. You'll get more information about choosing a roommate, choosing a place to live. Those are all things that become part of this process. This is, again, making sure that you're covering your bases with different scholarship opportunities that are available. from beginning of the fall semester all the way through. Just make sure that you're following through these scholarship opportunities. And then also, in some cases, I mentioned earlier, there are programs that you might have to apply for. But at each university, depending on the area that you're going into, will be able to describe that more fully. In closing, the last thing I would really like to encourage you to think about as you're visiting this summer, possibly this summer, or this fall, is to make sure that you're scheduling some time on campus where you're not just walking around campus. You're going to actually take a campus tour, meet with an admissions counselor. Make sure that you're spending some time with departments if you have an interest area. As was mentioned earlier, this is a pretty big part of the process, and it comes up very quickly